You use Google, IRCC online account, and then sign it. Remember, I have already created my account. You have two ways of signing it in your account. I'm going to use this one. My username and password are already saved, but otherwise you need to type them. And accept the terms. They will ask you for a security question. And you access like this, the portal. The first step, this is my account, Alicia Lopez Flecha's account. This is my account. Obviously, I don't have any application submitted, anything. The first step is apply to come to Canada. Click here and determine your eligibility and apply online. You go here for visitor visa, study on or work permit. And then we start answering these questions. What would you like to do in Canada? I want to work. How long are you planning to stay? More than 6 months. Remember, the post-graduation work permit cannot be issued for less than 6 months. Select the code that matches your passport. You put the code of your passport. For example, I don't know, let's say China, for example. Let me see. I cannot, okay, Brazil. I found Brazil earlier. Okay, so we say Brazil. What is your current country of residence? You are currently in Canada and you guys are applying from within Canada, so you say Canada. Do you have a family member who is Canadian citizen or permanent resident? I'm going to assume the answer is no. In this context, family member means a spouse or common law partner or dependent children, okay? Or children, or your own children, sorry, as long as they are older than 18. So if you have a sibling, a sister or a brother living in Canada, that will give you points when you apply for PR through the express entry, but they are not considered family members for this purpose, for the post-graduation work permit purpose, okay? Date of birth, whatever your date of birth is. And then the next question is if you have the green card for the States, if you are a permanent resident of the States. If you are, you say yes, but most of you, the answer will be no. What is your current status, immigration status in Canada? Right now you are a student because you have a study permit. Do you plan to work on campus? That's already over. You are not a student anymore. Are you a full-time student and at a participating post-secondary institution and want to work off campus? Not anymore, because right now I'm applying for the post-graduation work permit. Have you recently graduated from a participating Canadian post-secondary institution for which your study program was full-time and a minimum of 8 months? Yes, that's what determines that you are applying for a post-graduation work permit. And finally, is your work an essential part of your studies? No, because I don't have studies anymore. That was for when you were applying for a co-op work permit if you needed to. Have you been told by an immigration office that you are approving principle for permanent residence? All of these questions, you need to read them carefully and say yes or no if they apply to you. I'm going to assume that you have not applied for this permanent resident yet, because most of the students, that's what happens. And do you have a written job offer? If you do, you can say yes and then show the job offer. But remember, the job offer is not required unless you have your spouse or common law partner applying with you. Do you have an official letter from your school that confirms that you have completed your study program? This is your completion letter and full achievement report. You must have that. If you don't have that, you cannot apply. Marital status, I'm going to say single in order to make it more simple, but for the ones who said at the beginning that we're including family members, make sure that you put here your status in Canada. And your status, sorry, your marital status, not your status in Canada, okay? So if you are divorced or a common law partner, in a common law partner relationship or married, whatever you are, you select that here if you are including your spouse or common law partner. If you are married but your spouse is not here with you in Canada, you still say married here, except that you are not going to include them in the application. That's all. Okay, we have two options, apply for post-graduation work permit or temporary resident visa. We are still in the process to apply for the post-graduation work permit. Remember that when you come from a visa country and you submit an application from inside of Canada, the process has two parts. First, you apply to extend your status in Canada. In this case, you apply to switch from student into worker, and then you apply for the TRV renewal. They ask us that question again. I don't know why they ask it twice, but that's again about the completion letter and full achievement report. Have you had a medical exam? Remember, it can be yes or no, depending. If I say yes, in the document checklist, I'm going to be required to provide the medical exam. If I say no, it's going to ask me, a medical exam is needed before you submit your application for applicants who want to stay in Canada for more than 6 months and live in one or more designated countries for more than 6 months in the past year. Remember, if you were in Canada, that's not your case. Or if you intend to work in one of these jobs that require contact with vulnerable people. Remember, we talked about that. If you say yes, the system is going to tell you you need that medical exam. If you say no, you won't be requested to give the medical exam. Okay. Do you want to submit an application for a family member? I'm going to say no to make that faster, but for the ones who are including family members, here you need to say yes, and the next question will be related to your family member, okay? Are you giving access to someone? We say no, because I assume you are doing the application yourselves. In the past 10 years, have you given your fingerprint? You say yes or not. I assume all of you have given the fingerprints already, because recently all the applicants from overseas were required to provide fingerprints. But if it's not your case, you will need to provide them. For a while, they exempt in Canada applicants to provide biometrics, but this is back to normal, okay? So if you don't have your biometrics, you need to say no here, and then they will send you a biometric letter instructions, VL is called, that you need to use, and you need to follow instructions to have your biometrics taken, okay? But I assume that most of you will have them by now. There are fees associates that, of course, you are going to be paying. And you have, is asking you if you have a digital copy, a camera that will allow you to make digital copies of your documents. If you have any problem with that, you can always ask in the IT department. They may be able to help you. And this is about how you are going to pay. You need to have one of these cards in order to be able to make your payments. Here are the questions. If anything we want to change, you just go to this little pencil and you change it. For example, let's say this one, have you had a medical exam performed by an IRCC authorized panel of physicians? If I said, oh, I do have one, why did I say no? Let me go back, and then I say yes, and then I update the information, okay? So that's the way to do that. Continue. And here we have the document checklist. This is the document that we need to provide, okay? To my PowerPoint, where we are going to look at the documents in more detail, but very quickly. This form that needs to be completed, we'll talk about that in a minute. Recent education transcript. This is your full achievement report, the one that you can download from the student portal. Family information form, that's because I put that I was from Brazil. So Brazilian applicants get that form that they need to complete. However, if I change the country, if you are applying from another country, that form is not required. But it's basically a form where you disclose your father, your mother, and a spouse, children, etc. The completion of studies letter, that this is your completion letter, the one that you can download from the student portal under service tab, print a letter, passport, digital photo, and proof of medical exam. The reason why I'm being requested the proof of medical exam is because I said I had one. If I had said I don't have one and I don't need one, I wouldn't be required to provide it. And then finally, under optional documents, that one is very interesting, client information. This is your chance to explain or add additional information to the application. If something you think is not clear or can create confusion, this is your chance to explain. I give you an example. Imagine that you had an authorized leave from studies. So there is a break in your achievement report. Here is your chance to explain. In that semester, due to medical reasons, I had to take a leave from studies. Such leave was authorized by the college. Please find attached the authorized leave letter as well as the medical notes from that leave that I got. Or I had to take a medical leave for personal reasons. Here is the authorized leave letter from my college. Or let's say that you came to Canada and you had a passport, and then after 1 year you had to renew the passport. Here you can say, when I came to Canada, I had a passport that I had to renew after 1 year. I have provided information of my new passport. However, here you have information of my old passport for your reference. Anything that you think can be good for your application, this is your chance to provide. It's optional. Yes, it's not mandatory, but it's in your own interest. Okay? Remember that. The burden of proof is always on you. When applying to IRCC, officers make their decisions based on the information you provide, and they can use their discretion. That's why sometimes there are exceptions. Sometimes you may not meet the requirement, but with a good explanation supported by evidence, the officer may still approve because you convince them, because you show them the evidence. Okay, so it's optional, yes. It's not mandatory, but it's extremely beneficial for the applicant, especially when there are situations that are not clear on first sight. Okay, so before we leave here, I'm going to download the form. To open these forms, sometimes you may have problems to open the form. They put me a software to open them. If you have problems opening the forms from IRCC, you can always ask IT. IT can help you. Okay, my form has already opened, so I'm going to save that here for later. Stop sharing and coming back to the application. There we go. Okay, so this is basically what we saw before, that we got the document checklist, and now we are going to start preparing the application, starting by the form and then all the documents. For the documents that you need to upload in each section, make sure that you create combined documents, because you can only upload one file per section. Each file need more than one page for something. For example, you completed 2 projects. You may want to create a completed 2 programs at Conestoga or at Conestoga and somewhere else, depends on your situation. And I'm providing both completion letters, completion letter in global business management, completion letter in human resources management. And then that we had in the list was the form. The first thing you need to do is download the form. I did that already before we left the document checklist in the mock application. And sometimes there is at the end of the presentation, I give you a link that explains how to open these forms. But still, if you have still issues, I recommend that you go to the IT department and they can help you. as I said, they install me a software that allows me to open them very easily, and that the software is offered to the students as well, okay? My second recommendation is that you use the guidelines to complete the form, the guidelines that are provided by IRCC. IRCC has very, very, very detailed guidelines that tells you one by one through all the fields what information to provide. The link to this guideline is also at the end of the presentation. Once you complete the form, you have to validate and save. The system is going to generate a barcode like the one that I have in my slide, and you don't need to print. There is no need to print and sign the form. The barcode is your digital signature, is enough. And then once you have done that, you have your barcodes, everything is completed, then you just upload the form in the section related to this. And before we move forward to the next documents, I want to show you through another little quiz. It's not really a quiz, this is more an exercise. We are going to go through some parts of the form that require questions. So I'm going to stop sharing here. I'm going to go back to the form. There we go. This is the form that you are going to need to complete. And now I'm going to launch my form. And here. Okay, how do you answer the first? Because is the number 3, apply for a work permit for the first time or with a new employer. Why is not the first one? Because you are applying for an open work permit. You are not applying for a work permit with an employer. You are not applying for an employer-specific work permit. Even if right now you have a job offer, you are still applying for an open work permit, a post-graduation work permit that is an open work permit. You want to have with that open work permit, you can work with any employer. The fact that you are right now working with a specific one doesn't mean that you are going to continue for the whole time. So the first one, no. The second one, restore my status as a worker, not either, because you only apply for restoration when you lose the status. So if you have a work permit or a study permit that expires and you don't apply for an extension on time, then you lose the status, you need to apply for restoration. But that's not the case here. You are applying for a work permit for the first time or with a new employer. That's where you are, okay? And then you are not getting a new temporary residence permit because this is for inadmissible applicants, okay? So you are applying for a work permit for the first time or with a new employer. Perfect. 79% of you got it right. Let's go now, continue with the form. Personal details, you need to fill all your personal details. Your current country of residence is already filled because it's Canada. Your status right now is a student. From the first time you were a student, you received your first study permit until your current expiry date. Previous countries of residence, all of these you can follow the guidelines and fill that form with the guidelines that I'm offering at the end. And here I come to a section that says passport. Passport is very clear, right? You just put your passport number, the country where it was issued, etc., etc. What do you put in your national identity document? What is the response here? The national identity document is a document that is unique of certain countries. Not every country has a national identity document. Actually, if you don't know, it's probably because you don't have it. Because when you come from a country that has a national identity document, it's such an important document that you know. Okay, it's like an internal passport. It's something that we use to identify ourselves. I say we use because I come from a country that has national identity document. So every time you want to do something in my home country, every time I want to do something, I need to use my national identity document, up to the point that right now that I live outside of my country, I still have it valid, because when I go back and I want to do anything, it's good to have it. If you have one, you say yes. If you don't, you say no, and everything goes blind. Please don't feel like you need to fill something here. I have students that put here information about the passport, and that confuses the officer. No, that's not a passport. Or the information about their driving license. No, this is not a driving license. National identity document is a document issued by the authorities of your home country and is something that you use to identify yourselves in your home country. Okay, so that's one section I wanted to stop by. Another one, well, in contact information, current mailing address is where you want the post-graduation work permit to be sent once you get the post-graduation work permit approved. So if you know that you are going to be moving soon, but you don't know where, you may use here a mailing address of a friend or someone you can trust to give something more permanent. Remember, the mailing address and the residential address don't need to be the same. You can be living somewhere and have your mail sent somewhere else. Make sure that the mailing address is very accurate because that's where they are going to be sending the post-graduation work permit once it's approved. Okay. The one here, the details of intended work is open work post-graduation work permit, sorry, and then when you read the guidelines from IRCC, it will tell you that some of the sections don't need to be completed when you apply for a post-graduation work permit. Education, I'm going to stop here 1 minute. It asks you, have you had any post-secondary education, including university, college, or apprenticeship training? And then it says, if you answer yes, give full details of your highest level of post-secondary education. Look at this. It's saying, give full details of your highest level of post-secondary education. It's not saying highest level of education in Canada. So that means that if you completed, I'm going to be very, very extreme here. If you completed a PhD back home, and now you are doing a certificate here in Canada, your highest level of education is obviously the PhD, not the certificate in Canada, okay? So you disclose the PhD. You need to use your highest level of education. If you are not so sure, if you are not so sure about which one is higher, you may want to double check with your student success advisor, or maybe the career advisors can also help you with that one if you are not so sure. But masters, PhDs are obviously higher than a certificate, so you put them, or diploma, okay? So you put them here, even if they were not taken in Canada. For the employment, it tells you to give details of your employment for the past 10 years. However, for post-graduation work permit applications, this section is not mandatory. You don't need to fill this section, only the first field. So in the first field, you put the time you graduate, sorry, right now, April 2023. Graduate student, because your activity right now is graduate student. Remember, you cannot work after you graduate. Company is Conestoga. College. 2, you don't say anything because you leave that open, because at the time of the application, you are still a graduate student. Kitchener, Waterloo, whatever your campus is. Country or territory, here is Canada. Canada, province, state, Ontario. That's all you need to fill here in this section, okay? And then you keep reading all the guidelines, and at the end, you type your name. Remember, you don't need to sign. You put your name and the date. From here, and you put the date. That's it. You validate, and after you validate, the system is going to generate the barcode. In my case, obviously, it's telling me that there are lots of fields that are not completed because I haven't gone through the whole thing. But once I complete all of this, I will get my barcode. That is the digital signature. No need to sign again. Okay. Okay. So based on what we just showed, I'm going to ask you a couple questions here. So true or false, our national identity document is a document issued for identification purposes. Not all the countries have one. If my country doesn't, I just need to answer no to the question and go to the next one. Perfect. You all got that right. Okay, that's completely true. Don't feel like you need to fill that. The next one is about, oops, I think I did the same as before. Hold on. Stop sharing. And then I can launch the next one. Choose the correct answer. If I completed a master's degree in my home country and a certificate in Canada, I have to disclose the following details. The details of the certificate I complete in Canada or the one outside. Perfect, you all got it. That's very, very good. Is the one outside of Canada. And finally, that one we talked a few times already is very easy. I will go very fast. Choose the correct answer after filling out the form. Choose the correct answer. Oh, I did that wrong. I don't need to print it out. Okay. I'm going to end that because that question is wrongly called. I said I need to print it out and sign, etc. No, you don't need to print it out. So you all, I'm not even going to share that one because there was a mistake in the question. Okay, so this is all for the form that you need to complete. As I said, my recommendation is to always follow the guidelines from IRCC. And let's look now to the other documents. Okay. Okay, other supporting documents. Now we are in the section below. Remember, there were 3 sections, the form that we have just gone through. And now let's go to the documents, the supporting documents. Passport, you have to create a combined document, PDF, where you include the page that shows your birth date and country of origin, the main page, and then any pages with the stamps, visas, or markings, as well as copy of your current document. If you are in Canada, you must show that to show your current status. So you will need to show your study permit here, okay? For the digital photo, you need to follow the specifications that are beside the document checklist. They tell you exactly how the picture has to be taken. My advice, but I belong to a different generation. I know students now can do that with their phones very easily, so you may be able to do it. My advice is if you have any doubts or you are not so sure about how to take the picture, just print out the specifications and take them to a professional photographer, and they will do that for you. There are plenty of places in Kitchener and Waterloo where you can have that taken. For the immigration exam, if you need it, immigration medical exam, sorry, if you need it, you can just bring the printout that you got from the doctor. Remember, the visit date has to be within the last 5 years, because normally it's 1 year, but now with the temporary policy, 5 years is still valid. For the achievement report, you need to download it from the student portal. You go to grades, achievement report, or view achievement report, and then you download the achievement report, and that's the one you can provide. You don't need to wait for official transcripts. You can still request the official transcripts if you want to in records, so you have them ready in the case that the officer wants to see them, which is unlikely. But in the past, sometimes when students have too many breaks or too many, sometimes officers ask for official transcripts, so it's good to have them ready. Or it's also good to have them for any other purposes other than immigration. But for the sake of the post-graduation work permit application, you don't need to have official transcripts, okay? You can apply with the achievement report that is in your student portal. And then the completion letter for your program, or if you completed more than one program, you will need more than, one completion letter. So if you completed 1 or more programs, you will need more. You need to provide a completion letter for each program that you have completed. There we go. Now I say that right. The completion letter is available once the last grade is posted, and then your status is changing from student into graduate. So in your achievement report, you have a student, and then the day you have your last grade posted, boom, it switches into graduate. At that point, you can download the completion letter and the full achievement report. If you are currently a full-time student in your cohort, no more action is required. It will happen automatically. If you are currently part-time, clearing your last remaining subjects, then you need to submit an application in records office for them to switch the status from a student into graduate manually. When you are part-time student, you are not with your cohort, you are not a cohort student, and therefore you don't graduate automatically. You need to send an application to graduate to records, and then records switches you manually. And then once they do it, you can download your full achievement report and completion letter. Okay. And the completion letter is ready in the student portal service tab, print a letter. Okay. And then optional documents, we talked about that before, is your chance to add any additional information or anything or further explanations that you may want to provide so the officer can make a more accurate decision. It's very important that you explain your transcripts, especially if you have authorized leaves. As I said before, if you took a medical leave or personal leave or leave due to academic reasons, make sure that you explain that the leave was authorized by the college, and you provide the authorized leave letter from your international student advisor. If you took an authorized leave letter and you don't have, if you took an authorized leave and you don't have a letter, talk with your international student advisor, because we can provide that letter retroactively. Okay, we can look back and look at the leave, why was the leave taken, and if it was authorized by the college, we can still provide that authorized leave letter. If you have any other leaves that are not authorized leaves, like you change your program, or you were discontinued and then you continue in a different program, or any kind of breaks that you had, make sure that you explain, especially when they were more than 150 days, when they were more than one semester. Explain what you did, how you comply with the study permit conditions, whether you change your status into visitor. Explain everything very well. If you change the programs or you got a credit transfer from one program to another, make sure that you explain that too. And if you have part-time semesters, for example, you took some part-time courses during a scheduled break, make sure that you explain that, so the officer knows that the part-time courses were taken in a scheduled break and not in an academic session, and therefore you still meet the requirements for post-graduation work permit. Or if you only took part-time semester in the last semester, the very last semester, and you were full-time before, make sure that you emphasize that. And if you have part-time courses in your transcripts that were taken simultaneously at the time that you were full-time, make sure that you explain that too. You want to avoid that the officer says, oh, part-time, that person doesn't qualify for post-graduation work permit. And maybe you do, because this part-time was at the time you were full-time, or this part-time was only at the very last semester, or this part-time was taken during a scheduled break, not during an academic session. But sometimes the officers are not so familiar with the design of the program, or not so familiar with the situation, and may accelerate their answers. So that's why it's in your own interest to explain all these things in a very clear way. Okay. And here we go with the very last quiz of the day. Afterwards, I'll go very quickly through some important reminders, and then we'll head to the Q&A section. Let me